Okay, I knew this movie was gonna be bad. To be honest, I kind of wanted it to be bad, but it was like the wrong kind of bad.
Different cultures all over the world, they reference a great tournament. Look, my research shows that there's realms and species that we didn't even know existed. That dragon marking, it signifies that you've been chosen to fight for Earth. It's an invitation to fight for something known as Mortal Kombat.
What's up guys, it's Cosmic Jono, and I finally saw Mortal Kombat, and it sucked. I don't think anybody's gonna be too surprised. It is Mortal Kombat after all. This is definitely one of those films that you gotta turn off your brain and suspend all the disbelief you have. But even with low expectations, this movie really isn't that fun, nor does it provide any solid entertainment. I'm not the biggest fan of the Mortal Kombat franchise, but I'm gonna try to summarize what Mortal Kombat is about. There is a super evil and powerful realm called Outworld, and they want to take over Earthrealm, which is us. In an actual war, they would probably body us pretty easily, so the Elder Gods, who look after the realms, created a tournament called Mortal Kombat to give weaker realms a chance to defend themselves. Each realm puts forth a group of champions that fight to the death. When one realm wins 10 consecutive Mortal Kombats, they are allowed to conquer the other without getting destroyed by the Elder Gods. Now, this is obviously a pretty ridiculous plot, but it's kinda cool, which is really too bad because this movie barely touches on any of that. They don't even really do a tournament at all. There is no Mortal Kombat tournament that takes place in this movie. That's my biggest issue with this film. I feel like they didn't commit to being Mortal Kombat. It feels like they're constantly trying to find a way to explain Mortal Kombat and make it less weird. They introduce a concept called Arcana to explain the different powers of the characters. It just really didn't work for me. I thought it felt like a really forced explanation, and the concept of Arcana takes up too much of the plot. It was a change I thought was unnecessary. These characters are weird, just go with it. Now, I'm not saying that changes are bad, but I don't think they made the right changes. The biggest change that they made was introducing a new central character named Cole Young. He was boring as shit, he's generic and one note. Cole is supposed to be the audience perspective of the film, and while I understand the need for something like that, I think this movie would have been better off being centered around one of the more interesting characters in Mortal Kombat, like Johnny Cage, or even in terms of the plot of this film, I think it would have been better if this movie was about Scorpion. Have him escape hell in like the modern day and have a fish out of water situation. Cole just really didn't work for me. He just felt off among the colorful characters in Mortal Kombat. The reason I mention Scorpion is because his story is an underlining narrative that is present throughout the entire film. It's perfectly set up in the opening of the film, and it really sucks that he was relegated to the background, because his opening is really the only time this movie felt like Mortal Kombat to me. The opening had this really brutal and visceral feel, which made me think maybe this film was gonna be more than what I expected. It very quickly divulges into cliche, generic, and lifeless crap by the end. I don't mean to grill the actors in this film, there were some very good performances. Hiroyuki Sanada, who plays Scorpion, Joe Taslim, who plays Sub-Zero, Jessica McNamee, who plays Sonya Blade, and especially Josh Lawson, who plays Kano, all play their respective roles with the perfect amount of self-awareness and grit.
You all saw that. Laser beam! It's better than fireballs, you pussy!
They perfectly captured, in my opinion, what these characters would be like in a movie. If anything, the performances were inconsistent, and the choices of Mortal Kombat characters they decided to include was really poor in my opinion. Like, who the fuck is this guy? You guys really chose General Reiko? Nobody gives a fuck about General Reiko. With all that being said, the most important part of a Mortal Kombat movie is, well, the combat, the fights. All the fights in this movie that don't involve Scorpion or Sub-Zero suck. The Kung Lao fatality and the Jax fatality is like the only exceptions I have. The fights in this movie lack any sort of force or weight. It feels like one of those kickboxing exercise videos. It's Mortal Kombat. These fights should feel hard-hitting and brutal. The sound design is especially lacking in the hits and impacts. You have all this blood and gore, but it doesn't feel natural to the film because there's no force behind anything. The fights are also cut to shit. The final battle is like multiple fights happening at the same time, and they cut them together like in a montage, which made me feel like these fights were unimportant. I would have loved for them to pull the camera back and let these fights play out. Try to capture the seesaw nature of a Mortal Kombat fight. There were some pretty creative moments involving the powers, but overall there was a lot to be desired when it came to the fights in this movie. As a fan, they did a bunch of things from the game, but they didn't go all the way, and it really annoyed me. For example, Liu Kang does his bicycle kick, but he doesn't make the sound. He doesn't go. Scorpion does his fire breath thing, but there's no skull. And for the love of God, Liu Kang's dragon. It's supposed to chomp the guy in half.
Liu Kang wins.
It's a fucking dragon. Overall, aside from like the first 12 minutes of this movie, half of which they released on YouTube, this movie is pretty shit. The plot is shit, the fights are shit. Some of the characters were okay. Normally I would have some sort of really cool outro, but this movie is shit. C-. Follow me on Twitch and Instagram.